This is Wycombe Sound.
Hello everyone, my name's Dane Cobain and you're listening to The Art Show on 106.6 FM at Wycombe Sound, live and online. You can also tune in on wycombesound.org.uk. This is the show where we cover the arts. We try to get as many local people on as we can. We have a different guest on each week, mostly musicians, poets, actors, screenwriters, filmmakers, all of that kind of stuff. We also play some local music as well. As always, if you're in the local area and you want to get involved, perhaps you've got something we can play on air or you'd be interested in coming on to talk to me, drop me an email on dane.cobain@wycombesound.org.uk and I'll get back to you as quickly as I can. We also have a Facebook page, so you can find us there if you search for The Art Show on Wycombe Sound on Facebook. And it'd be great to have you aboard. I always like to hear your feedback, and obviously we post about upcoming shows and let you know who's going to appear on them as well. So in the last few episodes I've given little readings. I've actually read out a couple of the introductory essays that Isaac Asimov wrote for his short stories. I don't have any of those today because I haven't been reading any Asimov. I've actually been reading quite a lot of Stephen King recently, but we'll talk more about that later. But instead I want to read this poem by Michael Rosen called A Long Time Ago. I found this in a little children's sort of scary, spooky sort of Ladybird Books horror poetry collection. Don't worry, it's not too scary. It is obviously aimed at little kids, but I just really enjoyed this little poem. A long time ago. A long time ago, there was a man who lived round our way, and he said, "When I die, I don't want to be buried in the ground, I want to be buried in the air." So he set about making sure he would be buried in the air. He got people to build him a big yellow tower. He said, "I want to be buried halfway up this tower." Not long after, he died. When they came to bury him, they decided that they didn't want to bury him in the air, halfway up the tower, so they buried him in the ground instead, and there was nothing on earth he could do about it. But the tower's still there, and everyone knows it was built for the man who wanted to be buried in the air, but couldn't make sure he would be. I don't know, I can't tell you what it is I love about that. I mean, I think it's possibly the simplicity of the language. It's quite dark as well. It's like one of the darker ones in this collection, I think. I don't know, it's just one of those ones that makes you think, and it's got like quite a classical feel while still feeling quite modern too, so that was cool. Anyways, later on in this week's episode, we are going to be joined by this week's guest, who is Charlie Heathcote. He's an AuthorTube and a YouTube friend of mine, and so we're going to chat to him after we check out some local music. I want to shout out, there's a Facebook group called, I think, just Musicians in High Wycombe. There's actually a few of them, like High Wycombe Musicians in High Wycombe. If you search for various little riffs on that, I suppose, you'll be able to find some of the groups. But I posted in one of those just to ask people to send me some of their music, and we're about to find out what the response was. So we're going to check out some of the music that I was sent by some of the local artists in these Facebook groups. As a reminder, if you make music yourself, please do let me know on dane.cobain@wycombesound.org.uk. That's dane.cobain@wycombesound.org.uk, and I'll see what I can do to squeeze you in. So this is Wasted Time by Project Wilson, featuring Matt R on vocals and guitars, Kevin Rios on vocals and bass, and Paul Umbach on vocals, drums and keyboards.
Life's been so good since you've been gone.
Love music. Love talk. Love Wycombe Sound.
Whatever career you're interested in, from film, music and the arts, to hair and beauty, construction, sports or healthcare, with Bucks College Group, you get more than a professional qualification, you get the Bucks College Factor. At our Aylesbury, Wycombe and Amersham campuses, you'll benefit from state-of-the-art facilities, with expert tuition and real industry experience. Something that top employers and universities are crying out for. Bucks College Factor. Search Bucks College Group.
From the 1st of April, your new Buckinghamshire Council will replace the existing county and district councils and continue to deliver all the services you are used to. Visit buckinghamshire.gov.uk.
Saturday nights from 8pm till 10pm. Live in Studio 2 from the centre of High Wycombe. It's Kev Kinch in the house.
It's Saturday night.
This is Kev Kinch in the house.
Right, it's Saturday night. Let's do this.
Turn it up!
Hi, this is Kev Kinch, and I will be playing you the very best in house and dance music on your local radio station, Wycombe Sound, from 8pm this Saturday night. I'll also be playing the very best reworks of those favourite old school tunes. So that's this Saturday from 8pm. Turn up the volume. Oh, and mind your bass bins, by the way.
With Kev Kinch, your Saturday night soundtrack is sorted.
This is a journey into sound.
The music just turns me on.
This is Wycombe Sound.
You need to go surfing. Yes, take me to this dark room. We were the same as you. We were the same surfing. Yes, take me to this dark room. We were the same as you. We were the same surfing.
That was Swimming in Lockdown by Bolo Bolo, and before that we had Wasted Time by Project Wilson. You're listening to The Art Show on 106.6 FM Wycombe Sound. My name is Dane Cobain, and I'm joined by this week's guest, who is author and YouTuber Charlie Heathcote. So welcome, Charlie. To kick things off, the question I've been asking everybody is, what was the last book that you read, and what did you think of it?
It was Forced Out by Kevin Maxwell, and it was alright.
Better or worse than, say, our buddy Reed of Wind Up Bird Chronicles?
Well, you see, that's two different books, that is.
That's true, yeah. Because
the Wind Up Bird Chronicles are a bit absurd. Forced out, memoir, racism, homophobia, can't really compare them.
Yeah. Yeah, well, you had mixed feelings about the Murakami as well, didn't you? Actually, I was gonna tell you just before I hopped on the phone to you today. I've got the audio book of what I talk about when I talk about running on, and because I read this like about a year ago and was like, this is excellent. I really like this book, and there's like some great philosophy and stuff. And I haven't reread it. It's not quite as excellent as I remembered.
Yeah, I had to read that one for uni, and that one's never been something that I would have quoted as excellent, but it exists.
I've got a bunch of different stuff I want to talk to you about, but first off, I'm going to I've kind of structured this. I've got a few questions that I want you to answer to explain what things are, and then we're going to build on those. So I wondered if you could tell us what a TBR is, and whether you could then say what some of the books are that are on yours.
Okay, so a TBR is a to be read, and it's the books that you plan on reading in a certain month or a certain amount of months. And currently the only thing I've got on there is The Master and Margarita. That's it. I'm trying not to make any at the moment. That'll keep you going for a while, I should imagine, though, right? Oh yeah, I'm planning to take the entirety of July to read it. What was that? You read, because you recently read another pretty long, dense book, didn't you, as well, that you were reading at the same time as Murakami? Yeah, The Eighth Life by Nino Harachvili. 934 pages long. And do you want to tell us about that one? Because I think you had some interesting stuff to say on that. Yeah, so it was longlisted for the Booker, and it basically spans about 100 years of this life in a Georgian family throughout 2 world wars and all the political stuff going on there, and how the family ends up getting involved in the politics. And it basically asks the question as to whether we're always fated to make the same mistakes as our ancestors. And if you've got time to read 934 pages, I'd recommend it. There's cursed chocolate, acid attacks, everything. I suppose there must be an audio book of it knocking around somewhere as well. I'm not sure whether there is yet. They're probably still recording it. Well, yeah, it would take a while to record. There might be one. One might exist. It'd take a few days to listen to. Yeah, even at twice speed or whatever. Yeah. Yeah. So speaking of audio books, we're going to talk a little bit more later on about your books and your writing, because you've recorded not necessarily full audio books, but you've done some readings from your books as well. I wondered if you could tell us what that experience was like. Well, it's completely different to actually writing the thing, and you recognise where you stumble over your words a lot more, and there are some sentences where you have to be careful about how quick you read. But I did set out to write my books so that they could be read originally, so it was great practice to see whether that's actually the case. Well, I suppose you call they're marked, or you call them monologues, don't you, as well? So yeah, it's almost the perfect medium. It ought to be, and originally I did set out for R. Doris to be read, like I say, that one to be read aloud, and monologues, so that it could easily translate to radio. But the later books don't do that. But I hope that they could still be read aloud, but it'd just be a longer monologue. Yeah. Like it'd move from half an hour to about 2 hours. That sort of thing. Yeah, that's cool. That makes sense. So I want to move back to some of those sort of definition-y questions. So, all right. What is BookTube, and can you tell us about your little corner of it? Okay, so BookTube is as you say, a little corner of YouTube where people discuss books, and I'm not really sure about my corner at the moment. There's a wide variety of people reading a lot of different things on there, and yeah, my part of BookTube is small, but there's a sense of community there. That's really the only way I could explain it. People are talking about books most of the time. Sweet. And for you, have you found that it's helped, to raise awareness and to sell your books as well? it's helped my books end up in different parts of the world I wouldn't expect them to go to, like South Africa and Canada and those sorts of places that are a lot further afield and places that I could never imagine to travel to promote the book. So it's worked out in that sense. And yeah, it's managed to get my books into the hands of more people than I would have been able to, because it takes a lot of money to travel, and I have none.
What are some of the books that you've buddy read, and who have you buddy read with?
Okay, so a buddy read is where you're going to be reading a book alongside another reader. So I buddy read with you. We did The Wind-Up Bird Chronicle. We were supposed to do Cannery Row, but I waited a long time before I started that. And the only other person that I've buddy read something with is a booktuber called Abby, who I've read 3 books with her now. Malmoth by Sarah Perry last year, Nevernight, which I actually didn't finish, and The 7 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle earlier this year. But it really helps to give you a different perspective on a book you're reading, and it can enhance it a lot of the time. And you'll pick up on things that you didn't necessarily notice without the other person pointing it out.
It's interesting to see what different people from different backgrounds highlight as well.
Definitely. Like when I gave up on that book earlier this year, that was because the buddy reader, I think, it got a bit fed up of me saying every single day, I'd have given up on this book by now. And I think it was detracting from her reading experience. So she just decided to continue on her own.
It's funny actually, because now you mention it, there are a few that I've done where the only reason I finished reading the book is because it was a buddy read. I mean, the one springs to mind was The Passage by Justin Cronin, that was about 800 pages. And I buddy read that with Mara from Books Like Woe and somebody else, and all 3 of us didn't like it. So for like 3 weeks, it was just us emailing each other, being like, "Yeah, I'm still really not enjoying this, guys. I don't like this." And I think it made it onto all 3 of our worst books of the year or something. But probably because we forced ourselves to keep reading it, you know.
Yeah, if you'd asked me beforehand, I could have told you not to bother with that one.
Yeah. Well, now I know. Moving on to your writing, how long have you been writing for? And would you like to give us an introduction to some of your published work?
Okay, so I've probably been a proper writer since I was about 11, so 16 years of just. Well, that's when I wrote my first novel, so that's when I say I started. Yep. And I am currently writing a series of comedic monologues following the 72-year-old housewife, Mrs. Doris Copeland, which is in the style of Talking Heads and Victoria Wood and Roy Clark, and just is inspired by a lot of the comedy that I enjoyed when I was younger. And so I write those as monologues that could be read or performed in half an hour. Well, each one, the books go on for quite a while, and it seems that a few people find them funny. And then earlier this year I released a cozy crime novel, An Heir to Murder, that you helped to edit, which you edited, and that is the first in a series, but unfortunately due to current times I haven't toured it as much as I'd hoped to, so not many people know about that one.
Just talking about our Doris, I wondered if you could tell us how that came about, because that's linked to your writers group, isn't it, I think?
Oh, sorry, yeah. So that was about 9 years ago when the local writers group first started. We allow different members of the group to lead workshops every week, and one of our members decided to do his workshop on gardening, and he wanted us to write a piece just about gardening. I know nothing about gardening. I never plan on learning anything about gardening. Everything I plant dies. And I was about 10 minutes into this, what was supposed to be 15 minutes of writing, and this just appeared in my head, this line saying, "Our Doris has developed an unhealthy obsession with slugs." And then from there, every week when I got stuck, I'd write another Our Doris story, and then eventually people started asking me when a book was coming. I never planned on writing a book, and then eventually, over time, I thought, actually, this is a good idea. And from there, it spiraled into a book that I didn't intend to bring out independently at first, but another poet friend forced my hand when they wanted a male writer to go to a local library to be part of an author panel. And she said, Charlie's got a book coming out, and it's going to be out in spring. This was 2015. And so I very hastily finished writing this book and telling everyone that I'd always planned to bring it out.
Well, it sounds like they did you a favour in the end.
I mean, definitely. I feel like 5 years of financial hardship writing my own books has been fantastic.
You're listening to The Archer on 106.6 FM Wycombe Sound. My name is Dane Cobain. I'm here in conversation with this week's guest, who is author Charlie Heathcote. And this is a track by Drumojo called Hope's Alive. He's written a little bit about it here. He says, 29th of March 2020. The music was originally written for a poem I wrote on the passing of my father for a musical I am writing. It made perfect sense to rewrite the words for the current situation as a tribute to all the workers still working hard to help us survive this terrible pandemic. The track features the brilliant piano playing of Emilio Morone, who I recorded for this in 2019. The ending hopefully signals a positive future vibe.
This is Wycombe Sound.
Welcome back to The Archer on 106.6 FM at Wycombe Sound. My name is Dane Cobain. I am here in conversation with indie author Charlie Heathcote. Let's jump back in. You know, most average, or the average person on the street probably doesn't realise. And in fact, I think with indie writers, there is this. The reason that there's this perception of indie books and self-published books as not being of a high quality is because not everybody does make this financial commitment. I mean, you can write something in Word and you can just have it printed into books without even reading back through it or anything. But if you want to do the process properly, you've got your layout costs, your cover design costs, marketing costs, all of this stuff. What would you say to people to kind of make them appreciate how expensive it can be just to be an author and to get your books out,
Well, I think that all of the evidence is there, and there are so many indie authors who have come forward and talked about, like you're saying, the editing costs and the costs of the people who design covers.
Mm-hmm.
And when I first started out, I did do it all on the cheap.
Yeah.
But I did have so many people from the writers group helping me with it, and I had a friend who said she'd edit the book for me for free, so that really helped me. And then with the second book, like every single book I've done has had an editor.
Mm-hmm.
It's just been that it's been another writer. And it was with the last book when I hired you that the first time that I'd put that expense there, but that was simply because I felt like that book was worth the expense, and that it needed that other eye going over it because it was something completely different to Our Doris, which is very regional. But I have seen people forking out, that will not sound good on the radio. I've seen people put out a lot of money into the thousands of pounds to help publicise their books and get their books out there. But a lot of the time it does end up coming down to publicity and getting out there and sharing your works with people. And I'd say that most of the time when I go out and do a reading, people still don't know about my first book, and that's still the one that sells the most because that's becoming people's introduction to my writing and where they want to start, and then hopefully come back for the other ones later on. But it can be a very large expense, but it's the same whether you go as an indie writer or a traditionally published writer, just the difference being when you're traditionally published, the publisher's going to be the one to pick up the costs. Whereas we're funding this all off our own backs.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. And I think even then, even if you do make it big, as it were, and sign with, say, Random House or someone, it's actually a lot like the music industry, where they'll have 10 artists and they'll spend a bunch of money promoting these 10 artists, and the hope is that one of those artists takes off and pays for all of the other ones, So it's extremely difficult, just especially. I think when people think about authors making a living or whatever, they think purely about book sales, and even like the really well-known authors struggle just to make it just on book royalties. Like they're still doing after dinner speeches and who's it? I saw do you know who Mercedes Lackey is?
I do, yes.
Yeah, so I saw her on Quora the other day because she's super active on Quora, posting questions and answers, and she posted on her freelance writing rate is 10 cents an hour. Sorry, not 10 cents an hour. That'd be amazing. Sorry, 10 cents. 10 cents a word. That's it. Yeah. Which actually is just over double my rate, which means I'm halfway towards Mercedes Lackey. That's how I see it. But like, she's a career writer, New York Times bestseller and stuff, and she's obviously still got her freelance writing rate because she still needs to make money from commissions and stuff. You can't purely live on royalties alone, I suppose.
Yeah, this is the case for a lot of people at the moment, I think.
And it's the same with like how with YouTubers. When you see a successful YouTuber, they're rarely just living on the ad money. They're normally doing sponsorships as well and doing this and that. Maybe they've got merch out. So, and I guess a lot of creative fields are having to do that. They're having to like find multiple different income streams, I suppose.
Yeah, there are so many writers now who have Patreons or coffee pages in the hopes of trying to get that bit of extra money just to get them by. Also, a lot of them, if you're able to join the Society of Authors, you can apply to them for grants as well, where they'll give you a grant to tide you over should your book not be doing as well as the publisher or you might have hoped.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose as well there are even like things like writing competitions and poetry competitions and this and that. So there are opportunities. It's just finding them and being lucky. I suppose. I mean, it's a mixture. Well, I think it is. I don't know about you, but I'd say you need that mixture of like lots of hard work and a little bit of luck as well.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I think there is a sense of luck there as well. But I think that a lot of the success you'll see, there will be writers who aren't just doing a novel a year. There'll be loads of different commission pieces or magazines or that sort of thing where they're just trying to get their name out there as well.
Yeah, that's it. It's like the hustle, the constant hustle or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to ask a question about your work, if that's all right. I'd like to know what are some of the weirdest donations you've had at your charity shop?
Well, there's one I can't actually mention on the radio, I don't think. We've had children's potties donated that have still been used. But you do get every single thing because everyone believes that there is a use for the thing that they're donating. And, you know, I've had sinks with the washing up still in them donated. I'm trying to think of the weirdest thing now. That's put me on the spot.
Well, I imagine you get quite a lot of weird stuff as well, so...
Not weird, we're lucky, I suppose, in that for the 5 years that I've worked at this shop, there hasn't been anything truly weird. There have been some great finds, but nothing as weird as might have been at another shop.
Cool. And have you ever had any of your books in the charity shop?
Oh, yeah. That was, to me, that was a sign that I'd made it.
Yeah.
When I walked into Oxfam and saw a copy of my book on the shelf. The worst one that I had was when I came into the charity shop I work at, and a volunteer had purchased my book off me and had me sign it, and then donated it in the hopes that I wouldn't see it. And there was that mild bit of annoyance where I thought, well, I could have bought that back and sold it on if I hadn't had it signed. But
you could sell it to someone with the exact same name.
It's a very, very what's the word I'm looking for? Individual name.
Unique.
And a very unique. There we go. It's a unique name with a unique spelling of the name. So I couldn't necessarily have done that.
Yeah.
So we just never talk about my books at all now, which is perfectly fine, and I'm not bitter about it at all.
Just a couple more questions to end on. Who are some of the other indie writers whose work you admire?
I feel like you've said this as it's a loaded question for me to mention your name.
Potentially.
So we'll say Dane Cobain, just to get that out there.
He is very good.
He is. I mean, I doubt I would have asked him to edit my book if I thought he was bad. Obviously, Emma Rosen, who we know through YouTube. Joy Winkler. She is a local poet who was traditionally published, but for the last few years has been independently releasing her own poetry collections, and she has toured 2 different verse dramas around England now through her own, well, on her own merit, on her own funds. And I guess I should also mention Margaret Holbrook, who is another local writer I know, but had she not released her book, Cul-de-sac Tales, I wouldn't have recognised how I could have formatted R. Doris to release that. And so there are 4 writers that I definitely tell people to look out for.
Cool. Perfect. And as for yourself, what's next for you? What have you got planned next?
Oh, it's definitely going to be the final Doris book.
Cool. Have you got a title for it?
Yes, it's going to be called Royally Doris.
Cool.
And it's going to be the 4th and final book in the R. Doris series. And I feel like after nearly a decade, that's enough time. I never thought I'd be writing this character for this long.
Yeah.
And I've got a lot of projects in the pipeline.
Because you've got, for example, I don't know if you want to talk about them, but you've got your YA project, for example, haven't you?
Oh yeah, so that's going. It's going to be more of like a middle grade series, that one. So I've got a plan for a series there of 5 books. I've got the Alice Valentine series that started earlier this year, which is the series of cozy crime novels. And I've got a plan for 10 of them, and then further books set in Partridge Mews, where R. Doris is set. such as a book set in a charity shop and that sort of thing. And I've got a lot of things to get to, so that's why I kind of feel like now's the perfect time to call it a day with Ardoris.
Draw a line under it and look ahead to the next thing, yeah.
Yeah.
Cool, and where can people buy your books and find out more about you?
Well, my books are available on most of the major websites online, you know, like Amazon, Waterstones, and my website. And most people can find me if they search Charles Heathcote on Twitter and YouTube and Instagram, but for everything else, it's on www.variousaltitudes.com.
You're listening to The Archer on 106.6 FM Wycombe Sound. My name is Dane Cobain. I was just in conversation with author Charles Heathcote. He's probably one of my favourite indie authors publishing today, so definitely check out his work, especially if you need a bit of a laugh, as I feel like we all do at the moment. So we're going to check out some more tunes, and then we'll be back later on with the part of the show where I share a couple of things to keep you entertained. A music thingy, a book, and a TV show. I explained that terribly, but it'll all make sense when we get there, don't worry. This is Tankus the Henge with Smiling Makes the Day Go Quicker.
Broken down country girl found some metal at the end of her road leading nowhere before. Now she's got the whole world outside her door. This isn't the way it used to be. I want my kite back in my hand. It's moving too fast for me. It's one way only. No show tonight. Smiling makes the day go quicker. Life begins to turn around. Upside down comes round again. Here's that crazy chaos you call home. Old people missing their train. Lovers left standing out in the rain. See the girl reduced to tears. She's had to start all over again. This isn't the way it used to be. I want my kite back in my hands. It's moving too fast for me. It's one way only. No show tonight. Smiling makes the day go quicker. Life begins to turn around. Upside down comes round again. Here's that crazy chaos you call. Smiling makes the day go quicker. Life begins to turn around. Upside down comes round again. Here's that crazy chaos. Smiling makes the day go quicker. Life begins to turn around. Upside down comes round again. Here's that crazy chaos you call. Smiling makes the day go quicker. Life begins to turn around. Upside down comes round again. Here's that crazy chaos you call home. Smiling makes the day go quicker. The day go quicker, life begins to turn around. Upside down comes round again. Here's that crazy chaos you call
home. Love music, love talk, love Wycombe Sound.
Being a foster carer isn't just about providing vulnerable children a safe home. It's about loving, listening and guiding. It's about changing their lives. If there's space in your home and you have the time and patience, then Nexus Fostering wants to hear from you. We're your local fostering agency, rated outstanding by Ofsted, and we're here to support you in supporting them with full training and a competitive allowance. For a career that really makes a difference, visit nexusfostering.co.uk or call 0800 389 0143.
Hi, it's Pippa here. Join me every morning at 7 o'clock for the Wycombe Sound Breakfast Show, featuring all your usual favourites, including Carefree Karaoke, The Breakfast Banger, Chickadita's Choice, and, in an effort to keep your morning routine as normal as possible, we'll be taking the register at 8:45. I'll name check all the people that have been in touch with me every morning. So why not tweet me, send me a message on Facebook, or email studio@wycombsound.org.uk. Don't be late now, and no skulking behind the bike sheds. That's the Wycombe Sound Breakfast Show every weekday morning from 7.
This is Wycombe Sound. is Wycombe Sound.
That was Harry Quinn with Coloured Sound, and before that we had Smiling Makes the Day Go Quicker by Tankers the Henge. I enjoyed a show they played. Well, they played a full show as the full band at the church space at the at Wycombe Arts Centre. But then the front man as well, Jazz DeLorean, he also did a solo set just inside the cafe space there, which was also great. So I thought we'd give those a listen. It must be weird for their vocalists, because they're like known for being on tour all of the time, and so this sort of forced downtime must be really strange. I imagine he's probably doing a lot of live streams to keep himself sane, you know? Anyways, that brings us to the part of the show where I share a book, a TV show or a movie and an album to keep you guys entertained. So for this week's book, what are we going to go for? I guess I'm going to talk about If It Bleeds by Stephen King. Now, I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of it. I do like Stephen King. So my problem is this is his newest release, and it's like a novella collection. It's got 4 novellas in it. So we have... I'll just talk about each of the stories. So the first one I think is called Mr. Hartigan's Phone, and it's basically about this guy dies, this old guy dies, he gets buried with his mobile phone, and one of his friends rings his phone just to hear his voice on the answer phone message, you know, and he finds that the phone is ringing, and it's strange because the phone should have ran out of battery by then, you know. And it kind of builds from there. So there's that one. There's also a story called The Rat about a writer who's struggling to get his manuscript finished, and he goes off to like a little, I suppose, a home away from home, a little cabin in the woods, and he kind of gets ill and then thinks he's hallucinating and sees this rat, and then agrees with this rat that if one of his friends dies, he'll finish his manuscript. And that's basically the premise of that. So those two are both very old school King in terms of concept. But to me it just felt as though he's kind of almost been reduced to imitating himself rather than trying something new, you know. Then he had the story, I can't even remember the name of it now, but this is a 3-act story, except it's told backwards, so you basically start at the end and work back towards the beginning. And for me it more felt like an intellectual exercise as opposed to something that, you know, maybe was publishable. And then we have If It Bleeds, which is the title story, and that was actually pretty good, and probably, and yeah, in fact it does make the thing worth reading. Although I would say it works best if you've read King's Bill Hodges trilogy, as well as The Outsider. It's kind of a direct sequel to The Outsider in some ways, and it stars Holly Gibney, who is one of his more popular, of his more recent characters. She's sort of a young, well, she works for a private detective agency. She's kind of the boss now, and I think she has Asperger's as well, and she is a very cool character. My only problem actually with these books in this series is that I feel like when you're writing true crime, I'd rather just have the grittiness of it, you know. I think as soon as you start introducing the supernatural to true crime, I don't know, it loses something and becomes something else, I guess, which I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of. But overall I did enjoy reading it anyway. I always feel like King on a bad day is better than most people on their good day. But yeah, I don't think it is necessarily as good as something like Different Seasons, which is one of his older novella collections, which has got The Shawshank Redemption, The Body, Apt Pupil, and The Breathing Method in, all 4 of which are amazing. Basically, my recommendation for books this week is just read some Stephen King. Although in 2020, you don't really need to read King, because it basically feels as though he's writing the plot for this year. As for albums, I'm going to recommend Self-Made Man. So this is the new album by Larkin Poe, who I can't remember their surname now, but they're two sisters. The older one plays pedal steel guitar, the younger one is the lead guitarist and vocalist, and they're sort of rock and roll, bit of country in there, a bit of pop influence. They're just a great band, really. They do some awesome covers as well. I watched them on YouTube actually, so to help promote this new album, it came out on June the 12th 2020, so only a couple of weeks ago. And yeah, they've been coming up with some creative ways to promote it. So they did a show recently that was a live show from a bowling alley, and obviously due to coronavirus and whatnot, there are restrictions in place. So they had the band all on stage. None of those needed to wear masks, but they were socially distanced and whatnot. Then you got a couple of cameramen with their masks on filming it for the live stream. And then what was cool is they had the monitors above the bowling alleys, and they were getting fans to use Zoom to come in and sort of be a virtual audience. So that was super cool. But the album's great as well, so definitely listen to Self-Made Man by Larkin Poe. And for this week's TV show / movie, well, I've been running out of entertainment-y things. I've actually been watching Jacksepticeye on YouTube play The Last of Us 2, which, for those who don't know, big, like probably one of the biggest video game releases so far this year, other than whatever that one was that came out. There was one that came out just at the start of lockdown, I think, as well, that was keeping people busy too. But yeah, I've been watching a lot of YouTube videos and listening to music, but not really watching too many TV shows or movies. I did rewatch Hitler's Circle of Evil on Netflix, which is quite interesting. I do love any documentaries really on any subject, but I find like the darker side of humanity quite fascinating. So, you know, World War II and serial killer documentaries and that kind of stuff are always up my street. But I also watched Apocalypse Now. I rewatched it for whatever reason. I can't remember why. But that's going to be my recommendation for this week. Because actually, on a rewatch, yeah, it really holds up. I think I watched the director's cut as well. So it was like 3.5 hours long. And I remember watching this director's cut before and thinking that there were certain points that, like, it dwelled on for too long. So, for example, they meet some, French Vietnamese, and they stay at this like ranch there. And in the extended edition, they spend a lot of time at that ranch. But actually, it's all character building and stuff. So I don't know. Maybe I was too young to appreciate it before. But it is strange because I rewatched that, and then I picked up Hearts in Atlantis, which turns out to be about the Vietnam War in a way. It's one of these weird books where everything relates back to the Vietnam War, and it is about the Vietnam War, but the actual stories themselves aren't about the Vietnam War. They're all set in, Derry, Maine or wherever. So yeah, Apocalypse Now, give it a watch if you haven't watched it recently. Anyway, that brings us about to the end of this week's show. As always, my name was, and will continue to be Dane Cobain. This is The Art Show on Wycombe Sound 106.6 FM, live and online. You can tune in to us on wycombesound.org.uk. You can also find us on Facebook if you search The Art Show Wycombe Sound. You can email me here at the studio on dane.cobain@wycombesound.org.uk. And we're also up now on Spotify and iTunes and all other good podcast providers too, so you can catch up with us there if you missed the broadcast. Thank you to Charlie Heathcote for being this week's guest. I'm not 100% sure who we're going to have next week, so just tune in to find out, I suppose. I also want to quickly point out before we end a few of the previous episodes, because I was coming up towards a time limit, we've had to sort of fade out the ends of the songs. You can obviously hear the full episodes over on Spotify and iTunes, as I say, if you've missed any of the tracks. But also, hopefully we'll be able to fix that now so that doesn't happen. I don't know, we're all learning as we go here, It's a brave new world of radio broadcasting from home. Anyway, on that note, I'm going to leave you this week with something that Bob Newell, who is a friend of mine from the open mic scene here, he made me aware of this. This is Top Notes with One Can Trust. I'll just read out the blurb that they've put here. Well, Bob said to me, this is the choir my Deborah's in with the One Can Trust kids. Any good for your radio station? And I said, yes, thanks, Bob. So Top Notes posted, they said, Top Notes Choir, together with some of the One Can Trust street heroes, bring you this recent collaboration and isolation vocal project. You've Got a Friend in Me, featuring special guests Antonia, Edie, Elizabeth, Grace, Hamish, Henry, Jonah, Keon, Lois, and Lucy. And if you search for Top Notes, which facebook.com/Top Notes Choir, you'll be able to go in and check out the video for it as well, because the video adds a lot to it. You can see the full choir in isolation. It's very cool. All right, here we go.
Got a friend
This is Wycombe Sound.